What was she planning to do with me? One time I went to the bar with one of my friends. I had just turned 21, so I hadn't been to many bars up to that point. My friend was drinking on the way to the bar, so he was already pretty drunk when we got there. When I sat at the bar, a cute girl came up and talked to me and my friend. She said her name was Candace, and I noticed she had really, really bright red hair. I assumed she dyed it. It was pretty, but unnatural. Anyways, this girl was flirting with me and my friend. She could tell my friend was already very drunk. To be honest, I played along like I was drunk already too, since it seemed to be working for my friend. I didn't know if she was just trying to get free drinks, so I told her I didn't have much money. She offered to buy us drinks. She kept buying us drinks, and I started to get confused as to who she liked between me and my friend. My friend went to the bathroom. Before he came back, he was kicked out by the bouncers. He was too drunk. Candace and I went outside with him. She kept telling him to go home with her. He was out of it, so he could barely answer her. I told her he was too drunk and that I couldn't let him go anywhere. I didn't want him to wake up hungover in some random house with no car and no idea what happened. Candace kept pushing it, saying that she would take care of him, and I told her no because I had to stay with him. I was more sober than him. It was my responsibility. I told her that the only way he was going anywhere was if I tagged along. I assumed she thought I was jealous or cock-blocking, but my friend could barely stand and lost interest in Candace already at that point. She immediately started flirting with me and offered to get my friend a taxi to drive him home. And she said we could go to her place alone. At this point, I had a few drinks and was pretty buzzed, so I agreed. We took my friend to the taxi and walked to her car. I slightly stumbled on the way to her car. "Wow, you're pretty drunk, huh?" she said, smiling as she held onto my arm. "Yeah," I said. I don't know why, but I just felt slightly shy and anxious. Everything was just happening too easy for me, so I felt uneasy. We got in the car and we drove down the street. "Want to stop at the liquor store and get some more to drink? I'll buy it, so don't worry about paying," she offered. I didn't want to drink any more than I already did. I was already buzzed and wanted to be able to carry myself throughout the rest of the night. Sometimes I made myself look stupid when I was drunk, so I didn't want to ruin anything with Candace more than I already did earlier, with telling her my friend was too drunk. I told her I was already drunk enough, but she insisted. I didn't want to seem lame, so I told her to get me a pint of liquor with some apple juice to chase it. She went in the store and came out with more than just a pint. I assumed she wanted to drink more, and that's why she got a fifth instead of a pint. On the car ride, we passed the bottle back and forth, but she took tiny sips. I tried to take tiny sips, but she kept passing me the bottle and telling me to drink. I somehow managed to drink all of my apple juice, and pretended to drink the bottle by spitting the liquor in the apple juice bottle. I tossed the apple juice bottle full of liquor out the window before she saw it. I didn't want her to know I was acting drunker than I was. She actually believed I was sloppy drunk when I was simply buzzed. I took a couple more sips of the liquor and finished the bottle. Throughout the car ride, I called her by the wrong name a couple times to get a reaction out of her. She didn't react to it. She just kept letting me call her Carla without correcting me. For some reason, I thought she lied to me about her name initially. We drove up to her house. I pretended to trip and stumble into her front door. She helped me walk inside by holding me up. She opened her front door, which was unlocked. We walked in her house. She closed her front door and then locked it. I thought it was strange, but assumed she didn't want anyone walking in on us. I told her that I had to use the bathroom. I walked into her bathroom, locked the door, and looked at the mirror. I just felt strange. I felt like something was off. I felt myself becoming more drunk from finishing the bottle earlier. I turned on the sink to make noise and puked up the liquor I drank. I flushed and went to the sink and started drinking the tap water out of my hands to sober up. I just didn't want to be drunk, but I wanted to hook up with Candace, so I wanted to pretend to be drunk. I turned the sink off and I could hear her talking to someone. "He's drunk as hell. He can barely stand up, you do it." Who is she talking to? And do what? I walked out of the bathroom and into the living room. The moment I stepped into the living room, I saw her walking into another room. All I could see was the back of her head. That strange, very bright red hair go into another room. I didn't see her face or anything. I just saw her kind of walk fast into the room. The living room was pretty dark. "Hey, what's going on?" I slurred like I was drunk. She walked back into the dark living room and up to me. "Let's go to my room," she said. I looked at her bright red hair and then into her eyes. They were different. Her face was different. It was another girl with the same hair. That's when I realized. It was another girl with the same wig on. It was a wig the whole time. She had changed it with the girl from earlier for whatever reason. My heart felt like it stopped, but I tried to look like I had no idea it was a different girl. I kind of smiled at her and told her I needed to use the bathroom one more time, and told her sorry I was so drunk. She said, "It's fine, just hurry up in there." I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I heard her whisper something to someone again. This time I think I heard a male voice whisper back. I honestly didn't concentrate on listening to exactly what she said. Something sketchy was going on and I had to get out of the house. I opened the bathroom window and jumped straight out and ran faster than I have ever in my life. I didn't look behind or anything. I just ran through the backyard, jumped a fence, ran through someone else's backyard, hit a road and ran toward the main road. I kept running down the main road until I saw a 24-hour convenience store. I ran into the store and stood right at the front of the store in front of the camera. I called a taxi and went home. I tried to think of what happened that night. What was she or they planning that night? Why did she tell me a fake name? Why was she trying to get my friend and I so drunk? I thought maybe a robbery, but she kept spending money on us. She kept buying us drinks and even paid for my friend's taxi cab. And mostly, why did she wear a wig that she gave to another girl to wear? Who was she talking to? What did it mean? And what was in that room they tried to lure me into? Edit. The next day after this incident, I went back to the house with a couple of friends just to see what was going on. Nobody was there. No cars, no people, nothing. Just an empty house. I ended up finding out that the house was a summer rental. And whoever those people were, they broke into that house and used it for only that night. And never came back. I wish it was my drunk roommates eating my food. This is my brother's girlfriend's story. She doesn't have a Reddit, but I told her about this subreddit and she wanted to share her story because it's creepy, but also to learn from it. I go to school in a big city that is one of the least safe cities in the US. I chose this school for nursing, and definitely not the location. I live in a row house, that's what we call it, off campus with 4 other girls, cheaper and nicer than dorms. Or so we thought. I guess you get what you pay for. We're all girls and sophomores in college. As you would guess, we go out, drink, come back and do things we don't remember. We had just started our rent in August. 3 floors plus a basement that was padlocked by the owners. Understandable. We would definitely have parties down there to avoid immediate cleanup. The house was great. Amazing location to the school and work. I'm a CNA who works odd hours. It was not expensive and in good condition. I had never lived with that many people before. Just one roommate, so before we definitely knew if one of us had misplaced or changed something. I started to notice my snacks were either half gone or completely gone. I was getting annoyed, but a house of this many people is too much work to figure out who ate what, so I ignored it. Slowly, as girls do, we start making comments about someone eating our food but passive-aggressively. You know, college girls. We all just let it go because who wants a whole house fight? I work until about 11 in the NICU and get home about 11:30 mostly on weeknights. I started to notice pans left out or snack wrappers around. I thought it was odd because none of my roommates had done that before. But just thinking, oh, they probably drank a bottle of wine and then went to bed and forgot about all this. Again, my roommates started making comments. This time we started to ask because it was getting annoying. All our food being gone and things being left. I knew it was one of them, but who wants to admit they ate someone else's snacks in college? Snacks are a high commodity. We chalked it up to the girl who only smokes and eats her weight in food. She swore it wasn't her. This went on for about 2 months. It got more obvious that someone was clearly taking everyone's food. Definitely the girl that only smokes. I see her eat her whole snack pantry in a night. I wish it was her. One night at work, I was about to get off, but a situation happened and I didn't end up leaving until 12:30. I took the bus home. I got home and I was about to collapse. I wanted to go to bed ASAP. I walked in the front door, and the stairs are directly in front of you. You can also see down the side into the kitchen. I walked in and saw someone in the kitchen, but was way too tired to say hi, thinking it could end in a 30-minute conversation about nothing. So I went straight upstairs. When I got to the second floor, I noticed all my roommates' doors were closed, which always means they're all either in their room for the night or asleep. I got a weird feeling. Just something that made it click. They were all asleep, right? I texted our house group chat asking if anyone was in the kitchen. I felt stupid for even asking. 2 responded no, and they said that the other 2 had been asleep. I knew it wasn't any of my roommates down there at that moment. I dialed 911, but didn't press call. I crept into my roommate's room across the hall. Thankfully, or maybe not thankfully, she didn't have her door locked. I whispered telling her I think someone's in the house. She gave me the widest eyes and almost looked like she was going to cry. She didn't suspect anything like I had. But for reference, a very bad area, as in there was a shooting in the house 2 doors down only weeks earlier by an intruder. She mouthed to make the call. The whole time we were dead silent. We didn't really hear anything at all. I was starting to think I was seeing things after such a long day at work, and was regretting that I had doubt, thinking I'm going to look like an idiot when they show up, and I was just overtired and dreaming. We explained what's going on, and they said they would send someone ASAP, and that actually does mean right away since it's a big and dangerous city. The police showed up, and I didn't even want to go downstairs, but the operator confirmed that it was them, so I did. But the whole time, I could swear the operator could hear my heart beating. The police come in and look around. I'm thinking, oh God, I look so dumb. They ask if there's any other floors. We tell them technically the basement, but it's padlocked, so really no. They check the basement just in case. And well, yeah, they were right. A man had been living in the padlocked basement. The lock had been pulled off and the hinges were kind of just propped against the wall. We never looked at it though. We rarely went out back. The guy had taken a comforter of one of my roommates out of the hall closet, but had a mattress from God knows where in his clothes. Well, he was the one moving and eating all of our stuff. He would come in and out in the middle of the night and do it. He started getting more comfortable. I don't know if he was drugged out or forgot to clean his tracks or if he didn't really care. Me and my roommates had pretty consistent schedules during the week, probably letting him think that any time after about 12 was good to come out. We never slept with our individual doors locked, and that's what freaks me out the most. He had access to any one of us at any moment, and we had no idea. When he was getting arrested, I was the only one to go down and look. I didn't know why I did. I wish I didn't. I took a picture of the process of him being arrested to show my roommates who were too afraid to go down. This is him. So yeah, let's never actually meet, dude. To my high school friend, let's not meet. So this happened a few months ago. I'm a sophomore in college and was traveling down to my hometown over break. I was having some relationship issues with my stepmom, so I didn't want to stay at my dad's house at the night I arrived at my hometown. So I phoned a friend of mine from high school if I could stay at his place. I knew from social media that he was still in town, and I've stayed at his place before, so I knew there would be a place for me to stay if they could allow it. My friend, let's call him Z, seemed like a pretty normal dude. We weren't best friends or anything, but we got pretty close by the time we graduated. We would occasionally text or hang out if I was in town, and catch up, reminisce on the times we spent in orchestra or in English class. When I called, he seemed extremely enthusiastic. So he's normally an upbeat guy, but this time it seemed like he was getting a brand new car. I didn't think about it at the time, and he said I could sleep in the guest room, so I headed over. When I got in his house, he was just as excited as he was on the phone. He was bringing up stuff to do, like getting high and watching weird movies or playing video games. Z's parents weren't home, so he really wanted the opportunity to smoke. I was pretty tired from the drive, but since we rarely see each other, I thought a little bit of bonding couldn't hurt. We played Smash Bros, smoked some weed, and just chatted for a few hours. It was longer than I wanted, but I was having fun, so whatever, right? By the time it was getting late, around 2 a.m., he started asking some pretty weird questions. Like if I ever wondered what it was like to kill someone, or if I thought anyone would miss me if I was gone. This along with some pretty normal questions like if I had a boyfriend or how my parents were doing, or if I'm making any friends at school. Gave me a weird feeling. I was confused in the moment, but it didn't hit me until after that Z could be assessing me for something bad. The weirdness of it all made me just want to go to bed. We stopped the game and both went into the basement where his room and guest room were. We say goodnight. I go to my room and get ready for bed. I'm having trouble sleeping, just insomnia that I've had for a while, so I stay awake around an hour until I hear some movement outside my room. The walls were pretty thin, so I could hear footsteps walking past my door and up the stairs to the main floor, then back down quickly after. What struck me as odd was that I didn't even hear the basement door open, which creaks when it does. The light didn't turn on, so I was confused what Z was doing. I just heard him go back into his room, but I had this odd feeling. Ever since I met him this night, he seemed a lot different than he's ever been. I decided to look him up on social media and Google to see anything out of the ordinary. Everything seemed normal, until I found his Tumblr, which was linked from his inactive Twitter account that I found on my Twitter contact list. His Tumblr was, well, disturbing. There were graphic drawings of mutilated bodies of humans and animals, links to suspicious-looking websites that I didn't dare to click on, text posts / stories about murdering, cannibalism, necrophilia, and torture. There were photos of guns, knives, and axes, which after looking closely, were taken in his bedroom. The last post, Around the week prior was a text post from the account saying he wished he could find someone easy to kill, like a homeless person. I was immediately filled with dread. I knew he was going to do something. He must have gone upstairs to lock the door. I packed my things. Luckily, I packed lightly and opened this small window at the top of my bedroom's wall. I started desperately climbing through, and as I was pulling my legs through, he opened the door. It was dark, but the street light illuminated it enough for me to see that he was carrying something long and skinny, so probably a knife. He didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I just turned around, hopped in my car, and drove as fast as I could to my dad's house. I immediately blocked him everywhere and reported his Tumblr account, not before telling the police. They said they couldn't do anything as the guns were registered under his dad, and he hasn't actually done anything yet. Nevertheless, I told my other high school friends not to hang out with Z. Ever since then, I've been creeped out whenever I meet new people. Just the realization that someone I knew so well could underneath be this person who could hurt me so bad, who could kill me. I don't know what you're doing now, Z. I'm not sure I want to know, but I hope you're getting help. Anyways, let's not meet again. My ex-housemate was potentially a serial killer. This is a convoluted story, so bear with me as I try to convey everything I can recall about what led me to the conclusion that my ex-housemate could have potentially been a serial killer, or a serial killer in the making. It was the summer of 2015 when I moved in, and at first appearances, my housemate/landlord Mike was somewhat normal, if not a bit socially awkward and dysfunctional. When I was signing the papers, he was adamant that I should never go into the basement, which I thought was odd, but I really needed a place to stay, and, well, people have their little quirks, so I just chalked it up to that at the time. As I got to know Mike, and our cohabitation continued, I learned more about the depths of his dysfunction. Firstly, that he used meth. Now, I don't automatically judge people based on vices, but I was surprised at the extent of his use. He was probably the first person I knew who used meth and balanced a full-time job, and enjoyed a decent amount of success. The reason this is important to the story is that when he would be around the house, drinking and using meth, he would start to run off at the mouth. He would often joke that if I smelled lye coming from the basement, not to think anything of it. I think it was probably the third time he said this that I asked why he keeps saying that, and he said, "I use chemicals to clean up after the bodies," with a wily grin on his face. I tried to chalk that up to a bad sense of humor, but it didn't sit right with me. He was also very particular that I let him know of my coming and going, and my work schedule. I remember him being shocked and uncomfortable one day that I ended up taking off to work, because he didn't realize that I was home. I remember that day because there was a lot of clanging and what sounded like muffled shouting coming from the basement. His car was in the driveway, but he was not in the main house or his bedroom. Other days he would play very loud music that bumped through the whole house. Sometimes, he would even play NPR talk radio at those volumes. In retrospect, I think he may have been trying to mask sounds. He would later make remarks about sex workers saying, "You can do whatever you want. You can choke them or beat them to death, and nobody cares." I took exception to this. I told him that I thought it was messed up, but when he would get tweaking, he would always come back around to alluding to the same kind of violence, talking about how he was a normal white guy who owned the house and had a good career, so the police would never suspect him. At this point, I start to think that it has gone too far to simply be a joke. I was in a weird position, because money was tight at the time and my options were few. I tried to convince myself that even if he is messed up, he is probably just engaging in outward fanaticism. I knew that he would acquire the services of sex workers on occasion, but again, did not judge the activity at face value, but started becoming concerned. Then, at one point when I was doing laundry, I caught whiffs of decomposition. The house we were in was in southeast Portland. It was relatively new. Having grown up in upstate New York, I know that animals can be trapped in walls and die. But this was the garage, and there was no animal scurrying in the walls. This was strange and telling to me. I considered carefully what I would do, and decided I would confront him about the smell. I decided to pose the question in a somewhat suggestive way. By expanding on his jokes, I told him that he needs to do a better job at cleaning up the bodies, because I smelled decomposition from the garage. I will never forget his reaction. His eyes widened, and he shot me a sharp glare. Somewhere between fear and anger, he stumbled over his words and eventually responded, "What? Really?" I said, "Yes, really." and there was a few seconds of awkwardness before he said, "Thanks for letting me know," and promptly went into his bedroom and shut the door. A few days after that, he went into the upper crawl space in the garage while I was again doing laundry. He called for me and was trying to convince me to come up into the crawl space. My body locked up, and it was like my instincts were screaming at me that if I went up there, I would not come back down. I gave some excuse that I could sparsely remember that I had to be at some place, packed my laundry, threw it in my room, and left. He spent a lot of time in the padlocked basement without a doorknob. The only way in was through the backyard. I wish I would have gone down there in retrospect, to either confirm or dismiss the suspicions once and for all. In the last couple months that I lived there, I was privy to more graphic comments about women and sex workers, explicit talks about sexual violence, and he was using more and more. He once showed me a video that he made. He is a graphic designer and an artist as well, which featured heavy bondage themes interspersed with distorted audios of women screaming and this strange leering figure in a plague doctor costume. It was one of those situations where any one of these things may have been innocuous, but as they accumulated, it became more suspicious to me. It was October of 2016 that I left there, taking off to Oseti camp during the anti-pipeline protests with Standing Rock, Lakota. A mix of feeling call to action and having nothing to lose, as I wanted to get out of that house in the worst way. And last night there, I did not give notice that I was leaving. He was drinking and tweaking again, started in on the same conversation, loosely describing murder and sexual violence in a tone of some sort of edgy joke. I told him that he would be caught eventually, not even holding back my suspicion anymore. He reiterated that he was the last person police would suspect, and asserted that they wouldn't catch him. He said this in a very serious and concise way, dropping the pretense that he had been using before. I left the next morning. This haunted me for months, then a year, then a year and a half. I felt as if I hadn't done anything. The guilt was eating away at me, so I called Portland Crime Stoppers and put in an anonymous tip describing what I had described here. When I did, the operator started going back and forth, putting me on hold because the call had piqued the interest of the police sergeant who was assigned to the call center. So they were asking me detailed questions about his vehicle, his house, the methods he described, etc. It seemed they took interest. I gave them as much information as I could remember, and I left it at that, feeling just a little better that I had at least tried to do something about it. Fast forward to recent times, I told my mother about all of this, and she became interested, asking about what house this was, and she ended up pulling it up on Google Maps. She put up the street view, and I noticed that there was a large enclosed trailer in the driveway that wasn't there when I was. I could theorize why it might have been there, but could not put together a practical reason for it, or why'd he be using it, unless he was moving or using it to haul things to discard. Admittedly, that is pure conjecture, but I couldn't help but wonder. I doubt that I will get closure, or have my suspicions validated unless he does finally get caught and arrested, and I read about it. I have grown up poor, and have been around the low life a lot. I have interacted with many sketchy and unsavory people in my time, but none of them have ever made the impression that Mike made on me. Make of it what you will, but I hope I never meet him again.